The Government is expecting to run a surplus of €10 billion this year in the public finances and a further €16.2 billion surplus next year. This money should not be locked away into a long-term fund serving the strategic interests of other countries. Part of this surplus should be invested in infrastructure that unlocks the massive economic potential that we have in our offshore renewable electricity sector. For example, by 2037 it's estimated that there could be 5,400 jobs supported in the Atlantic region through the offshore wind development, with a financial dividend of €4.2 billion, according to a study funded by Enterprise Ireland. But this will only happen with a clear signal from Government setting out specific targets for the installed capacity of offshore wind post-2030. Targets to 2050 exist, but they are not specific. And we should set aside part of the €26.2 billion to support critical electricity grid infrastructure off our coast and to aid the significant upgrade works at our ports. Presently, Belfast is the only suitable port on the island of Ireland for the development of offshore wind energy. We cannot build multiple offshore wind farms from a single port simultaneously. Now, Minister, you'll respond by saying the Government has set up the Offshore Wind Delivery Task Force to deliver our offshore wind ambitions. But from my personal experience, such cross-departmental task forces only work when the Minister sits at the table. And with all due respect to Minister Ryan, who is effectively running 3 government departments, co-chairing the International Energy Agency, keeping an eye on both the Taoiseach and Taoiseach and the shenanigans within the Green Party, he can't do everything. Is it any wonder he grabs 40 winks here in the chamber when he can? The most effective way for Ireland to take a leadership role in the offshore renewable energy sector is to establish an offshore renewable development authority similar to the IDA, and something that was unanimously adopted here by Dáil Éireann in December 2021. This new authority would drive a fully coordinated national action plan and would have responsibility ranging from research and development through to supply chain and commercial deployment of renewable energy, ensuring that Ireland becomes the leading global clean energy exporter. Minister, last week President Biden said Ireland's famous 40 shades of green are being supplemented by green energy, agriculture and jobs. And we can make that a reality if we lead directly from the front through the office of the Taoiseach. That is the type of strategic leadership that is needed to deliver on what President Biden outlined here last week.
I actually agree with an awful lot of what you said, although I think the cheap shot at Deputy Ryan is kind of beneath you, to be honest, because I've huge time for you, as you know. And can I also say, the ambition that this country has in relation to offshore renewables is in a huge part due to Eamon Ryan's relentless pursuit of this agenda for a long time in politics, long before this government, actually, and his vision in that regard, wanting to make Ireland Europe's capital, if you like, of offshore renewable generation, and I think we'll achieve that. I do agree with you, though, in relation to the challenge to get there, around licensing, around the need to set up new entities that are on the way to being set up, and boards have been put in place, and a chief executive will be in place soon, I hope, from Mara. And of course, a whole range of other regulatory issues that need to be resolved and are being worked through. The Offshore Wind Task Force, by the way, Minister Ryan does attend on a regular basis. He's actually asked me to come along to the next one. My department is going to get more involved in this from an enterprise point of view. I believe that offshore wind is not solely a climate change initiative that can decarbonise our economy and our society, but it's also a huge industrial opportunity in terms of a competitive advantage for Ireland in the future, being able to provide limitless amounts of clean, renewable energy coming in from off our coast. But the actual, the assembly of this enormous infrastructure to be built, I hope, in Irish ports, to be then assembled in terms of fixed and floating in time off our coastline is going to have a transformation effect on the Irish economy in terms of employment in parts of the country that don't have huge employment at the moment, and in terms of new clusters of industrial activity that will want to be connected to that. And I think of places like the Shannon Estuary, Cork Harbour, Rosslare, Killybegs, and other potential ports off the west of Ireland as well. So there is enormous opportunity. My department is going to bring recommendations to government in the next number of weeks in terms of a proposal to develop an enterprise and industrial strategy around offshore wind to complement the work that the task force is doing in terms of trying to make it happen. You are right that hundreds of millions, if not billions of euros needs to be spent on infrastructure. And I don't think the government will be found wanting on that. I think the private sector is willing to spend a lot of this money because this is a good investment. But I think we will ensure that if there is market failure, whether that's in our ports or in terms of other infrastructure, that the state will intervene when necessary. So I just want to assure the House that this isn't only a focus of Minister Ryan's department, although he is leading on it. It's also a focus of mine and indeed of the Department of Housing and Planning as well, who are of course assisting in terms of the licensing and the permits that are necessary.
Minister, if it's a good investment for the private sector, which I believe it is, it's a good investment for our money as well, not investing in other countries instead. Now, Minister, on Saturday last, Germany stopped producing electricity from its nuclear power plants, leaving it highly dependent on fossil fuels, much of which is imported. At the same time, Ireland has huge untapped potential off the west coast to meet this demand. And we have an indigenous Irish company, Supernode, that wants to develop a transmission network right across Europe to export wind energy generated off our Atlantic coast and deliver it directly onto the European grid. But instead of forging ahead, the government is undermining confidence in the sector by moving to a new plan-led system that requires drawing up of maps indicating where new offshore wind farms are to be built. Now that's commendable, but we still don't know who is going to draw up these maps. Now we've had to wait for a decision from the Department of Housing on that. And Minister, I don't need to remind you that it's the exact same department that is yet to deliver on the revised onshore wind energy guidelines that you and I signed off on in May 2017, 6 years ago.
Yeah, can I just say in terms of onshore wind, this country's record on onshore wind isn't bad. We're one of the best performing countries in Europe, actually. We're providing about 30% of our electricity needs from onshore renewables at the moment, wind farms, and we'll do a lot more. And now we're moving into the solar space as well. So, I take some of the criticism, but I also want to put on the record the delivery that we've seen in recent years in terms of onshore wind. In terms of a plan-led system, look, we are moving ahead in terms of, for the remainder of developments in terms of offshore renewable infrastructure on the basis of a plan-led system for very good reason. We've got very clear advice from the AG on this. What we don't want is to have permits that are being challenged in the courts that delay things for years. And we need to have certainty that actually when we permit the building of enormous infrastructure, which is what this is offshore, that actually we are going to be able to face down legal challenges quickly so that we can move on and ensure that those permits are actually actioned. So that's the thinking behind a plan-led and state-led system, which I think in time developers will very much row in behind because they see the legal sense of it.